In this video, I'm going to go over a list of essential pieces of gear to me that most people don't necessarily consider to be photography related. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If it's your first time here, my name is Matthew. I am an architecture and design photographer based in Kansas City. If you're a regular subscriber to the channel, clearly you may notice a difference in the setup. Things just got switched around in the YouTube studio, so hopefully this is the way it's going to look for the next, for hopefully quite a while. Yeah, the background's a little bland for the time being. Over time, we'll put up more knickknacks and tchotchkes and, I don't know, maybe some of the cliche background stuff that a lot of other YouTubers do. I don't know. What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to put behind here? I have no idea. Now, I made a video several months ago about essential pieces of gear as an architecture photographer. In it, I talk about things like reflectors, lights, umbrellas, things that are pretty standard for most architectural and design photographers. But in this video, I wanted to go over some items that aren't necessarily marketed specifically to photographers, but definitely come in handy in this line of work. And as I go through the list, you'll start to understand more of what I mean. And make sure to stick around to the end, because I'm going to go over an item that, well, actually, it's a couple items that I'm going to lump together that, in all honesty, I consider to be game changers. Things that I only started using over the past maybe 2 or 3 years. Okay, first on the list, let's start off with something that a lot of architectural photographers will think is a no-brainer, especially if you tether on most photo shoots: an iPad, and in my case, an iPad Pro. I use a Cam Ranger for most shoots, and yes, a Cam Ranger is a piece of equipment that is marketed specifically for photographers, but the iPad is what I tether it to. And the reason I chose the Pro over just a regular iPad is, in my opinion, the bigger the screen, the better. A lot of photographers prefer to tether to a laptop, but my preference is the iPad, just purely because of the portability. Plus, if your client is there on site during a shoot, it's great to just hand the iPad to them so they can start to examine and pick apart the raw photos as well. Next on the list is a power bank, or for me, more accurately, I should say power banks, because I have a few of these. These are kind of self-explanatory, because so much of our equipment as architectural photographers needs to be charged on a regular basis. So why not have one of these on you when a piece of your equipment is about to die and you're in a pinch? Next on the list is something along the same lines. It is a car AC power converter. Now, these typically plug into that round circular outlet in your car that a lot of people just refer to as the cigarette lighter. And depending upon which one you buy, can provide you with one or even several just regular power outlets. Again, a lot of our equipment needs to stay charged, but sometimes items like battery-powered flashes need just your typical wall outlet, and power banks that I mentioned previously, they just won't do. Next on the list are TwoWay Radios, aka walkie-talkies. Yes, I know the cell phone has pretty much made these things useless, but here in Kansas City, there's a variety of types of properties. So yeah, majority of them are in the metro area where we have cell phone coverage, but every now and then, you do work in an area where cell phone coverage is really spotty. And if you have an assistant, or maybe the client needs to help you out in setting up a shot or holding something or firing a flash or doing something that's a distance away, and you need to synchronize your efforts, these two-way radios come in quite handy when cell phones just won't do. Next on the list is a Bluetooth speaker. If you've ever photographed a project where you're the only person on site, a Bluetooth speaker comes in quite handy. It's nice to just listen to music or podcasts while you're doing your thing. Now, if you want to listen to music or podcasts, some photographers would recommend headphones, and in my opinion, I do not recommend that. Headphones block out too much environmental sound, and you can easily get freaked out when you unexpectedly bump into someone or they happen to approach you. Next on my list are Apple AirTags. These are roughly the size of a quarter, slightly larger, but they're great little items to keep track of your equipment, especially if any of it's ever stolen. Even if you simply misplace or lose something that an AirTag is attached to, you can audibly play a sound to help you relocate it. Okay, that's it for things related to electronics. Let's move on to things that don't really have wires or buttons. Next on the list is a bubble level. If you don't have great levels built into your camera or tripod head, they're just a great way to double check your camera's positioning to make sure you got less work to do in post. Next on the list is, well, it's attached to my bag, I gotta grab it. Painter's tape. Now, first off, yes, I have had many clients ask me, why in the world do you have a roll of painter's tape attached to the strap of your camera bag? I've lost count at this point, of how many times painter's tape came in handy. Now, I use it the most related to another item, actually the game changer item I'm going to mention at the very end. But painter's tape just comes in handy in so many different scenarios and situations. And I say painter's tape specifically because if you ever need to maybe hold or tape something against the wall, clearly this is not going to do any damage to the paint or sheetrock. Next on the list is an item I know I have in here somewhere. It's a multi-tool, or at the very least some kind of knife, Swiss Army knife type thing. This is another thing I highly recommend, obviously, since I'm making a video about this stuff, but I have run into so many situations and scenarios where I was so glad I had this. It has not just a knife, but clearly a set of pliers there, different types of screwdrivers, flatheads, Phillips head, a sanding file. It comes in really handy. Most recently, I had a client who wanted to add a twig to one of the vases in the shot, and they wanted to grab a twig from one of the plants in the front lawn. We literally had nothing to chop or cut one of the twigs off until I realized, yeah, actually we did. Again, I highly recommend grabbing one of these, and I can't remember the exact price, but I'm pretty sure you could grab one of these for $30, $20, maybe even less. I don't know. It's been a while since I've looked, but yeah, grab one of these. You won't regret it. Next on the list are furniture sliders. Another item that's pretty self-explanatory. I always joke with mostly interior design clients that the title architectural photographer actually means furniture mover. So when you have to nudge a couch or a table, or sometimes just remove the items completely from a shot, using these are so much easier than trying to maybe deadlift an item. And also clearly, because of the plastic bottoms, helps protect the floor that the furniture is moving on. And if you want to be really careful, the set that I bought came with, I don't know what they call these little shams or booties for the furniture sliders. So that way, if you want to put this on wood floor, you know, again, it's probably microscopic and very small, but there is still a chance that plastic may scratch very sensitive wood floors. Well, putting this on top of the sliders really helps alleviate that problem. Next on the list is something that's pretty large, so we're gonna have to go to footage that I took of myself out in the garage, but it is a folding mobile cart. Now, this is an item that I don't necessarily use on all shoots. In fact, I use it very rarely, but I'm finding myself using carts like this more and more on commercial projects. Recently, I photographed a few spaces, suites and lounges at here in Kansas City, the Arrowhead Stadium. Now, there is no way I would have been able to get done what I needed to get done in the day and a half that I was there without this mobile cart. I had to carry a ton of equipment around with me, and lugging all that stuff by hand, even though I had an assistant there with me, it would have been darn near impossible. I'm so glad I bought that cart. And at this point, I've used it on maybe 4 shoots, but the shoots that I have used it on, it's been a lifesaver. Next on the list are more items that I do carry in my camera bag, and they are several of these spring-loaded clips. I think I have about 3 or 4 of these in my bag, and again, I don't use these a ton, but when I do need them, I'm sure glad I have them. Most scenarios where I need to use them on have to pertain to curtains, where maybe there's a set of curtains that just won't close all the way. Maybe, you know, if you've run into a scenario, you know what I'm talking about, where you try to close the curtains and there's still this maybe 1 to 2 inch gap where the light's still peeking through and it's ruining your shot. Well, that's where the spring clips come in handy. Or maybe you have bed sheets that just won't look taut and tight around a mattress. Well, these spring clips can help. Or if there's a set of tree branches that's interfering with your shot outside and you wish you could just grab them and group them all together, again, spring clips come in handy. These, again, are really cheap. You can find at your local hardware store like Lowe's or Home Depot. I'm sure you can get them extremely cheap on Amazon too. Next up is an item, or I should say a bunch of other items that will have to go out to the garage footage, and that is a props kit. Now, this I 100% have to contribute to architectural photographer Adam Taylor. Now, if you're familiar with my channel at all, you might be familiar with Adam Taylor as well. Adam has a course about licensing your photography, and one of the things he mentions in it is having a well-supplied props kit. Well, what's a props kit, you may ask? Well, I'll give you an example. Let's say you're photographing a vacant property and the appliances look amazing, the countertops look fantastic, kitchen cabinets are great, but there's nothing in it. Say it's vacant. And you know that if you were able to take a beautiful hero shot or two of that kitchen, you could license that image to, say, the cabinet company or maybe the appliance manufacturer, just something. But the problem is when you're there is that it just looks bland. Although what's installed looks fantastic, there just doesn't seem to be any life or personality to the kitchen. Well, That's where the props kit comes in. I have things like cutting boards, utensils, fake fruit, knives, bowls, cookbooks, a plethora of things that the average kitchen has out on their countertop. And then when you approach these companies to potentially license them, they're more apt to do so because they have personality, they have life given to them, as opposed to just something bland and bleak and empty. Next on the list is a good size cup. If you're shooting a project and you're on site for several hours, you're gonna wanna make sure that you got something to drink while you're there. I highly recommend a bottle or cup that's at least 32 ounces. Top it with ice, make sure it's one that's well insulated, and it should last you most of the day. Next on the list is something because I'm not in my earlier mid-20s anymore, and that is a bottle of pain reliever. Now, for the most part, I'm in relatively decent health. I don't really have any chronic aches or pains, but out of 365 days a year, yeah, statistically, you're gonna have at least a handful where you're not feeling 100%. Maybe you hurt yourself playing ball over the weekend or working out, or you just have a huge headache for one reason or another. You still got to go to work and you really can't call in sick to your client because you got a bit of a headache. Well, you're going to want a bottle of something on you. The second to last item on the list is bug spray. If you're shooting exteriors and you have to stand out in a field or just pretty much anywhere outside, especially during the spring and summer, and you're like me, and for some reason, maybe it's because of your sweat metabolism, I don't know what it is, but bugs just want to eat you alive. You will be very thankful that you have a can of bug spray on you. Now, last on my list, but definitely not least, I'm gonna lump these two together. They are heavy duty or even construction grade trash bags and sheeting. Like I mentioned at the start, this has been a game changer for me. If you caught my essential pieces of gear video I did several months back, one of the things I mentioned is having foldable reflectors on you to either diffuse, flag, or block out light completely, especially when it's coming from a window. As nice as the reflectors are, they still take up space even when they're folded up. These trash bags, on the other hand, which these are about 42-gallon size, when you take one of them and cut them in half, when you open them up, they're roughly about, if not larger than the average residential window size. So the bags matched with the painter's tape make for really quick, simple, and easy ways to block out light that's coming from a window. And along those same lines is this semi-clear plastic sheeting. And I think you would typically find this in, say, like a Home Depot in the painter's section. I believe this is sheeting that most painters would use to protect the ground or floor whenever they're working. But the benefit to us architectural photographers is if you place this up against a window or say shot a bare flash through it, it drastically softens and diffuses the light. Well, guys, that is it for my list of essential non-photography related gear. I know it's cliche to say to let me know if I missed something in the comments, but sincerely, I do want to know. I know I'm not the only photographer that has items like this. Not everything we carry with us in our bags, cases, and cars is 100% all photography related. There's gotta be some little things that you use maybe on every shoot that's not marketed to photographers at all. If there is, let me know. In fact, the reason I want to know is because the sheeting and the plastic bags, that was a recommendation from another photographer in a Facebook group. So yeah, let me know what items I missed because you might make my job easier. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram. If you liked the video and you got anything out of it, make sure to drop me one of these or don't. That's okay. That's okay if you don't. It won't hurt my feelings. It's all right. But if you didn't like the video, the easiest way to let me know is to hit the thumbs down button twice. Thanks again for taking the time to watch. We'll see you on the next one.